Katrina was so devastating. To me, it was such a defining moment in who are you going to be? When you look at something tragic like this, are you the person that thinks, how am I going to make money off this? Or how am I going to be a human being and help the people around you? And I said, well, how can we help all these people? Let's get their homes rebuilt. Let's get their homes elevated. Let's put solar on. Let's do energy efficiency. We thought we were going to do this for a couple of years and move on to do other things. Boy, were we wrong.
Hi, folks. I'm Conor Gaughan, and welcome to Consensus in Conversation, a podcast where we're talking to the innovators, entrepreneurs, and thought leaders who are committed to building successful businesses that also help us build a better world. When we talk about innovations in climate tech, as we frequently do on this show, one of the key goals that nearly always comes up in one form or another is building resilience. I mean, we just did an entire episode with Rich Sorkin of Jupiter Intelligence on how we need a new paradigm in climate risk management, so that companies can improve their resilience by better understanding the unprecedented challenges a changing climate will bring. Chief among those challenges is the increasing frequency and severity of extreme weather events. Of course, extreme weather is nothing new. Humans across the globe have battled natural disasters like hurricanes, floods, earthquakes, and the like since time immemorial. But what is new is the frequency and intensity of those events. Storms that even a couple of decades ago would have been considered once in a lifetime are now almost yearly occurrences. With one notable exception, and yeah, we're going to talk about that one. Out of the top 5 most destructive Atlantic hurricanes of all time in terms of property damage, 4 have occurred in the last decade. Out of the top 10 most destructive, 9 have been within the last 2 decades. That's despite all the advancements we've made in construction technology in that time. Losing everything and starting again once is a serious test for any family or community. But having to do it every couple of years really pushes the envelope of what human beings can endure. And yet, people do endure. As tragic and terrible as the stories of devastation in the wake of an event like a hurricane can be, we are almost always granted an amazing and deeply inspiring testament to the power and perseverance of the human spirit, the strength with which communities come together to rebuild, and the vital role that climate tech and renewable energy can play in enabling that rebuilding process. And unfortunately, we need only to look at the newspaper over the last couple of weeks for examples. My thoughts, and those of everyone at Consensus, go out to all of those of you on the Gulf Coast who have been affected by Hurricane Beryl, particularly to the people of Houston, many of whom, as of this writing, are still struggling without power. But even amid the distressing news, there are rays of optimism that shine through, and which offer hopeful proof of the massive value climate tech can offer at such moments. Just the other morning, Ford CEO Jim Farley tweeted data showing that owners of F-150 EVs in the Houston area have been able to generate at least a kilowatt-hour of power during the outages by using the bidirectionality feature that lets them use their truck as a backup generator. Now, 1 kilowatt-hour may not sound like much, but that's just the data from folks with F-150 Lightnings, which are not the only type of EV that can do it. And in an emergency, even a little bit of power just to charge phones can make a huge difference. Even more relevant and impactful have been the stories like the one Newsweek ran the other morning about Houston homeowner Brent McNeil, who was able to not only keep his power on, provide power to both of his neighbors, and host a third family because of the residential solar power system he had installed. Distributed energy resources, like the home solar system, can be major lifelines for families and neighborhoods during crises that knock the centralized grid out. And solar plus storage is often safer, more accessible, and in many cases cheaper than backup diesel generators. More and more, these types of events and challenges show us the importance of renewable energy, not just to mitigating the future climate effects of burning fossil fuels, but also building resilience against the effects that are already here. But while the rest of us are now beginning to catch up to the value of including solar in our rebuilding efforts, there are also those who have been out in front, leading the way in this field for decades now. And one of them is my guest today, Tom Neyhart, founder and executive chairman of PosiGen, which was born out of his work helping families in his native Louisiana rebuild in the aftermath of Hurricane Katrina. It's one of the most inspiring origin stories for a company I've ever heard. And Tom is an amazing storyteller, so I'll leave it to him to tell most of it. But part of the reason I love his work so much is that Tom's more than just a leader who stepped up to support his community in a time of need. He's also a keen businessman and serial entrepreneur who realized that the best way to help communities build energy resilience and build himself a massive untapped market in the process was by making solar the most affordable energy option for the lower and middle-income families who need it most. How he's been able to do that, and the impact that win-win has had on his customers, is truly powerful stuff. So let's dive right into my conversation with Tom Neyhart. Oh, and one small note. You may notice my audio quality this week is a bit different than usual. We hope you'll excuse that. Scheduling realities meant that I had to record this interview while traveling and without the usual microphone setup. Hopefully it's not too distracting, but we think the interview with Tom is very much worth it. All right, on with the show. All right. Welcome to the show, Tom.
Thanks for having me on the show, Conor. Really appreciate it.
I'm so excited to have you here today, Tom. I want to start well before the days of PosiGen and just hear a little bit about you and where you were from and what it was like growing up. We've talked before and I've seen your background. And I know that you got a deep connection to the state of Louisiana. So give us a little bit about your upbringing.
Yeah, look, I was the youngest of 8 kids, good Catholic family. Oldest brother's 22 years older than me. So by the time I came around, I think, I had to wave my arms a lot and make sure I got noticed. So that probably leads to my outgoing personality. My wife says that I've never met a camera or a microphone I didn't love. But yeah, I was very outgoing. We didn't have a lot. We made do with what we had. So, we started working from a very young age and became a salesman. I think at age 7, I was out selling seeds so I could get stuff out of the back of magazines, collecting bottles, returning them. So I could go buy candy, jumping in the ponds at the golf course and retrieving balls and selling them for, a little bit. And, grew up, got into sports, football, wrestling, track, loved it all. Always worked. When I was 12 years old, got my first paycheck job. I was working on a painting and roofing crew. And by the time I was 13, I was running one of the crews. So I love working with people. And when I got to the end of my high school career, I came down to LSU. I was going to wrestle and study petroleum engineering. Blew out my shoulder and decided that burning oil for energy just didn't make a lot of sense to me. So here I am. I've always been a serial entrepreneur. I always wanted to own my own business. When I was 15 years old, I opened my own roofing and painting company and had to hire somebody that was 16 to drive the truck to pick up the supplies at the center. And when I came down here, I spent a couple years going to college and working at the same time, and got offered a pretty nice position when I was a sophomore in college and tried to keep up both. And by that summer, I realized that wasn't going to work out. So I did not finish my college career, jumped into the workforce and opened up my first business. Gosh, just a couple years later, I think it was 1986. I was 22 years old. And I've been a serial entrepreneur ever since. I met my wife
amazing.
and 30 years ago, and she and I together have owned, managed, operated, been partners in or turned around or consulted with probably 23, 24 companies over the years and love every moment of it.
PosiGen aside, which of those 20 some odd projects, companies, turnarounds was your favorite? You got to pick a favorite child. Everybody has one. They just don't admit it, right?
Okay, 2 fun ones. I had a recruiting company for a while, and man, we were in the middle of the construction boom, and we were placing construction professionals all over the country, building casinos and high rises and hospitals, and that was just so much fun. I got to meet so many interesting people. I love construction. I go out to the job sites, but the most interesting one was. We started a medical transcription company where we sent somebody around. They pick up these little tapes that the doctors would talk in, record every night. And we'd have women that stayed up all night long, not being sexist, that just happened to be our employee group. And they would type up all the notes. And then first thing in the morning, we'd print them out on this sticky back paper and they'd drive them around to the hospitals and they would stick them in the folders. And we picked up, I won't mention which one it is, but we picked up a psychology place. They were an inpatient and they were locked in inpatients, a lot of cases. And I had to proofread all of them to make sure there wasn't any mistakes. And the stories I heard, and how many people went over the wall. That was one of the most interesting ones I ever
Wow. That's pretty fun.
Yeah, that was fun.
I mean, you say, thinking back all the way to being 7, you were always chasing projects and company, building something. When you think about kind of growing up, like, were your folks entrepreneurs? Was it something you saw? Was it something you modeled? Or was it something that just found you, picking seeds out of the back of the magazine? Like, how did that seed get planted was what I was going to say, but that's actually just too terrible a pun to even use.
Not really. My mom was a stay-at-home mom until I got into junior high, and then she went to work for a local department store. I mean, my dad had started businesses before, but by the time I came along, he was a senior executive at a firefighting manufacturing equipment place. And I don't know, there was just something about, I guess, being the youngest of all the kids, always wanting to to be seen and wanting to do things that other people weren't doing, and to, I guess, find a way to stand out. We didn't have a lot of money, so we didn't have allowances or things like that. So the things we had to do, we had to make our money if we wanted to go out and buy a new shirt, new pants. So there was part of that. Part of it was wanting to make my own future. And then once I got out there and was managing a business, even that roofing and painting business, just figuring out schedules and, costs this much for the paint, costs this much for labor. I've got insurance, I got the truck, I got this, figuring out how to price things, being able to deliver pricing always better, right? There's never been a time in my life that I was not able to deliver a better price on a paint job, on a new refrigerator, on a Gen Air installed kitchen, or on a solar system, or anything like that, and really add value. Somewhere along the line, I felt like I could look at things, and I never felt I was super original about things, but I could see how to put things together more efficiently.
What about like the question I've asked a lot recently, because it seems more and more a trend I've noticed. So many entrepreneurs grow up playing sports. Like sports is a big part. I was the same way. I'm curious, like if you kind of think back to those formative years and spending time on teams, working towards a common goal, like what are the threads that you draw between growing up playing sports and your entrepreneurial career?
Yeah, I mean, I look at the three things that probably impacted the way I approach projects, teams, and discipline. Football, I played lineman. We all had to do the right thing to be able to move the ball forward. It was such a team sport. Everybody relied on everybody else. If you made a mistake, if I made a mistake, the team doesn't win. Wrestling, as there's only you and your opponent on the mat, taught me a lot about individual responsibility, relying upon yourself. And then during when I was at LSU, between my freshman and sophomore year, I joined the Marines in the officer training program, and I spent 13 weeks at Quantico, Virginia, learning from the people that have redefined teamwork and determination and don't give up, never give up. Unfortunately, when I dropped out of college, I had to drop out of the officer training program. But those three things taught me so much about putting the team first, relying upon yourself, being a team that you never let anybody down. I met a guy that had enlisted in the Marines 8 years before and become a recon ranger. And, recon rangers for the Marines, they go and drop somebody behind lines, and he's there for 8 weeks. He's eating bugs, and this guy re-upped. And to re-up, you have to get your college degree, and then you can go back to, but he had to go back to boot camp with us. And this guy walks in, he's just a stud, right? And we thought he was going to be this arrogant guy, and he was going to be, just leave me alone. I'm going to do my thing. That guy sat down, helped us learn how to polish our boots the correct way. And when we started doing some of the big obstacle courses as teams, and somebody fell down, man, I remember seeing him just grab somebody and literally dragging him along to make sure we all got across. And, it taught me a lot about, you can be the biggest, baddest guy in the room or the smartest guy in the room, but you need to be humble and you need to be part of the team. You can't just stand there and do it all on your own.
Yeah. And your career to date, you've been kind of one of the biggest, baddest guys in the room in a good way, with 2,000 great turnarounds, companies, startups, a ton of success in industry. And a lot of it is kind of in construction or rentals. And I know both at Utica and then at Success. I'm wondering what you attribute your success at that time to. Looking back from here to those other experiences, like what do you look back on and think helped define that success for you?
I think part of it is deciding who your target customer is and then treating that customer like the guy that's selling Mercedes-Benzes every day, right? And if that customer is an unemployed person that is on, government assistance and lives in the projects, and if that person is low income or working class or fixed income or whatever, going out there and treating that individual as well as that Mercedes-Benz purchaser. I believe people try and take advantage of people because they think they're smarter, they don't have enough money, they can't protect themselves. And you see so many businesses get in trouble that way. But if you treat every single person you come in contact with respect and dignity and listen to them, man, they line up to do business with you.
I want to get to PosiGen, but I want to start with just the origin story itself, because I think it's such an impactful founding story. So, essentially, PosiGen was born out of the aftermath of Hurricane Katrina, right? And so I'd love for you to just tell us that story. what you remember, what it was like in Louisiana at that time, what you were seeing, and then, give us a sense of how that helped spark PosiGen.
Yeah, I mean, look, Katrina was so devastating. It was funny because we were having this big celebration because we'd reached a very large milestone with two of our companies, and we paid off all our debt and everything was wonderful. And, we had 5 different companies at the time. And my wife, Lisa, and I were just kind of on cloud 9. And all of a sudden, here comes Katrina. And I remember it was Saturday, and I get a call from a very good friend of mine that I met at Brennan's restaurant. He was our waiter every time we went in. He said, "Mr. Tom," he said, I'm scared. He said, "I live down here in Louisiana. I'm from New York. I see this hurricane coming." I said, "Paul, it's going to turn. They always turn." He said, "I'm really scared." I said, "Well, go on up to our house. The kids are up there. Go spend the night in Hammond." And, woke up Sunday morning and it hadn't turned, right? And so I had to get back to town, and Paul was up there and just driving through the devastation and just unbelievable. Couldn't get to him until Monday. Finally got to him on Monday. Of course, we had no power or anything like that. Picked up the kids, picked up Paul, got my wife, and I had my sister from Ohio trying to call every hotel, and she finally found one in Memphis. And so we drove all the way up to Memphis, get a couple hotel rooms, and it was like the second night there. Everybody's stir crazy. And we decided to go out to a movie, and I said, well, we got to get something to eat. And over my wife's objections, I pulled through Crystal Burger. So love them little burgers. She doesn't. And I remember being parked in the drive-through line, and I was talking to my wife, and all of a sudden it felt like like somebody was next to me. And I turned around, and there was a man standing right next to my window. And I jerked back, and I rolled down the window, and I said, "Can I help you?" And he said, "You evacuated from Katrina." And I thought about it. I said, "Oh yeah, my Louisiana license plates." I said, "Yeah, we did." And he looked at me, honest to God, with tears in his eyes. He reached in his pocket. He pulled all of his money out of his pocket. And he said, "I don't know what else to do, but I really want you to take this." And I was just blown away. And I said, "Look," I said, "we're actually in a really good position right now. I know there's a church right up the road here that's taking donations and money and everything else. And I'm asking you, please keep this in your heart, but would you take it to that church? Because I think they're going to help people that need it more than us." And he said, "Absolutely." And he walked away, and I was just like, oh my God, how does that happen, right? People, the outpouring of love. I mean, you saw the best and the worst in people, right? So we're in this hotel, and, we're into the second week, and I'm on my computer looking at the photographs of where, our locations were, and the water is still 9 foot high. And all of a sudden, my wife, who had gone down to wash some clothes for us, came back, and she says, "Hey, you got a minute?" I said, "Sure." And she opens up the door, and she says, "Tom, I want you to meet Shannon and Candace." And there's this lady with her 8-year-old daughter there. And I said, "Oh, hi, Shannon. Hi, Candace." And okay, and they left. And my wife comes back about 15 minutes later with clothes. I said, "What was that all about?" And she said, "They're from Chalmette, and their house is gone." I said, "Oh, geez." And she said, "And they're out of money, and they only have the clothes on their back and one outfit." And I was like, "Okay, let's pay a couple weeks for them at the hotel. Let's get them some clothes." And my wife said, "No, I told them they could come live with us until they got back on their feet." Now, my wife, Lisa, is a much more wonderful human being than I am. I was kind of like, couldn't we just pay for a month or two? And, so by the time we got back and we got power on, we were one of the lucky ones. Our power came back within 2.5 weeks, and our next door neighbor ran a gas station. So we had access to fuel for the vehicles and everything we needed. Within about 10 days, we had 21 people living in our house, which was just insane. This lady and her daughter and my friend Paul from Brennan's were there. And it was 21 months later when the last 2 walked out the door, which happened to be Shannon and Candace. And, it made you think about everything that was happening. And I remember it at a certain point, again, just not being able to get into New Orleans and get back to business running and everything else, that there was a little old lady who was raising her granddaughters a couple blocks away, and a tree had fallen on her house. And we just decided, me and David Bertrand, we're just going to go fix that house. We put on tool belts every day. We went over there early. People would always come by to help. Everybody chipped in to buy siding and, wood for the roof and the rafters and everything else. And just watching things like that, and then hearing these stories of people that were selling bottles of water for $5 each, were telling people they were going to do this and taking their money. And to me, it was such a defining moment in who are you going to be? when you look at something tragic like this, are you the person that thinks, how am I going to make money off this? Or how am I going to be a human being and help the people around you? And I always felt like I wanted to help people. I was always raised, my parents very much raised us as service individuals, and that's where it came from. I mean, that was it. So after that, we were still doing a lot of things. Lisa was helping low-income families in every way we could. We had built some low-income housing out in Texas and really invested in trying to make a good place for people to live in. And by that time, I had moved over and was really helping out rebuilding the city. I was contract CEO helping rebuild pump stations with the Corps of Engineers. And so when this whole solar thing came along, we really looked at it when we first started as everybody over in Lakeview had their homes rebuilt, their homes were elevated, they had solar, they had all these different programs. And we went down to New Orleans East, the doors were still hanging off the hinges. They still had the X's where people came in and checked for bodies and pets and everything else.
Yeah.
And there was just nothing being rebuilt. And, you'd go into the road home offices and you'd see these little old ladies sitting there with armfuls of papers and folders crying. And we said, how can we help them? So the whole thing actually started with, okay, there's some people doing solar. And some of my friends told me that they were doing solar. And I said, well, how can we help all these people? Let's get their homes rebuilt. Let's get their homes elevated. Let's put solar on. Let's do energy efficiency. Let's do all these things. And we started looking at all the programs. And honestly, Shaw had their own program over there at Road Home, and they didn't want anybody getting involved in that. Home elevation just looked like, too many people out there trying to just make a buck. And when we settled down, we looked at it, we said, look at this solar thing, right? It doesn't have a strong value proposition in the way they're selling it now. But because we're talking to these people about energy efficiency as well, it's like, why don't you pair the two? If we pair the two, can we deliver savings? And can we deliver it to the people that need it the most, right? I mean, you make $150,000 a year and I give you $50 a month. You spend that in Starbucks on a weekend. You're a working class family with a couple kids in school and you get $50 back. That's going for school supplies.
Yeah.
That's going for groceries, right? I mean, it's going for essentials. It's helping your quality of life. And that's where it all came from. And, then we said, okay, this seems easy. We deliver savings and we become a utility replacement instead of an installment payment agreement. And we went out and knocked on 1,000 doors trying to get a financial partner to finance this stuff for us. And they said, man, you're crazy. What do you mean you're not going to check FICO scores? What do you mean you don't care about their debt to income ratio? We're like, it's utilities. We're reducing their utility payment and they pay us. They're going to do that. And so, instead of becoming a solar and energy efficiency company, the first thing we had to do was become a finance company. And finally, local bank used to be Iberia. Now it's First Horizon. Took a flyer on Lisa and myself, and our partner at the time helped found the company, Aaron Dirks. And, they loaned us a couple $1 million. We went out there and showed that everybody in these communities wanted solar. They wanted energy efficiency. They wanted to save money on their utility bills. And, we started off in New Orleans East with 5 employees on Michoud Boulevard in an old warehouse. And we thought we were going to do this for a couple of years. And just like a lot of our other companies, and move on to do other things. Boy, were we wrong.
I mean, it's such a powerful story. When you talk about it today, give us the elevator pitch for the current way you're out there pitching to the market.
Yeah, when we're out pitching the market, we came up with an idea 14 years ago that nobody had, which was sell savings, base a company on savings, right? Going into a customer and saying, we're going to put 22 solar panels up on your roof. We're going to do a suite of energy efficiency upgrades. We're going to try and lower your bill by, $400 to $500 a year. Sometimes we hit a single and maybe it's only $100, but sometimes we hit, a double or a triple and it's $500 or $600. And we want to invest in your home. We want to help you with your quality of life and make a positive financial impact in the families you serve. And this was something different than what any other solar company was doing, both the EPC companies, the developers, and of course, the finance companies. And when you look at the customer base, LMI customers, right? They pay their cell phone bill first, their utility bill second, their house note third. If you become a utility replacement, people are going to pay you. And over the last 13 years, we've proved that out. We have 30,000 customers. Our portfolio performs as good at or better than any of our competitors out there. And, of the 37% or 38% of owner-occupied homes or of the total owner-occupied homes that are considered LMI, but are also solar ready, we're the only for-profit company that's out there dealing with those customers. So it's blue ocean. We've got the ability to continue to expand. Yeah. We're not fighting over that same customer. So when you look at our growth trajectory, we're way beyond what most of our industry competitors are, and we're not seeing the problems that everybody else is. And, those are the most important things. And then when you start to drill down to brass tacks, we have built in so many different ways of making sure that we don't fall into the same pitfalls of other industry players out there. This might be a bit of a secret to people outside the solar industry, but the way a lot of companies finance the solar business is they say, we're going to pay you this amount for the solar system that you build and give to us. And of course, we're going to bill the customer. Anything you charge the customer above this amount is your commission. You're just telling people to overcharge customers. You're telling people that they're going to make money by doing this. And look, there's a whole lot, and I'd say the majority of the solar companies, they're honest people, and they say, okay, this is a reasonable price. This is what we're going to sell it at. But you're leaving that door open to a lot of other people. We have one price. That price is the same for every customer in that territory. When I say one price, right? One price for each territory that we're in because of differences in utility cost and savings and things like that. So we take that out. We pay people not on how much they can jack up a price. We pay people on how many families they can help each month, right? Another thing is if you take a solar loan and something's delayed with your solar system, you might start paying your loan payments before your solar is even up on the roof, or a lot of times before it's even turned on. And with us, because we own the property, nobody gets a bill until after their solar system's installed, turned on, and their energy efficiency work is done, if that's attached to it at the same time. And so, putting in those safeguards made a lot of difference, and thinking about, how we save people money. And it's interesting. We just had an executive leadership team. We brought in a CEO, Peter Shaper, that is going to take us to the promised lands. At least that's what he told me when I hired him. And he was talking about the fact that there are some untouchables, and the untouchables is savings. We got to save people money. How do we drive more savings? Ben Healy, our CFO, he loves to say it's a virtuous circle. If we save people money, they're happy customers. They pay us on time, but then they tell people. And then we get new customers. And the more new customers we get from our existing customers, the less we're spending out there on marketing dollars, right? And we have 50% of our customers, I think 55% last month came from referrals. And that's just a huge number of people saying, hey, we like doing business with these guys. They're good people. Come do business with them.
Well, thinking back to just getting customers, I think solar has the reputation of, just that hard sales, door knocking kind of industry, especially when you think about what I imagine it must have been like to kind of be going into these markets that hadn't really been a part of the conversation as widely yet. And how did you, especially in the early days, get to people and build a market and build consumers and build trust in communities? Like, what was the trick to kind of getting started with that? Because I'd imagine it wasn't an easy sales process early on.
I think it was for us because we weren't trying to sell solar. We were trying to sell savings. We told customers, we don't care what your FICO score is. We don't care what your income level is. We only care how much we can save you. And if we can't save you enough money, we're actually going to not install the system. And they said, oh, no, you're lying. And to back it up, we became the first solar company ever to offer a savings guarantee that said, in your very first year, we're going to save you money. Your reduced utility spend will be greater than what you pay us. And if not, we're going to write you a check, or we're going to credit your bill or do whatever. And then what we did is we got better and better and better in delivering on it. Nowadays, before we even go out to a customer's home, we do a layout and we do an average energy efficiency savings to make sure we can save them money. Once we sign up a customer, then they go through a full process, a full deep dive and detailed final design. And all that looks at production and what they're paying and can we save them money. And then we go install everything. We do the energy efficiency work. And we get all that information back in. We go, how much are we saving people? And if we're not at our minimum threshold, then we're sending somebody out to do more energy efficiency work. We're sending somebody out to make a difference here. In the end, we're going to make sure that those people are saving money. And look, because we're a big company, we make mistakes. If somebody comes back and says, I'm not saving money, we're going to sit down and take a look at it and either say, let me explain to you how to look at your bill. Summers are getting hotter every year. Climate change is real and utility prices are going up. And every time the utilities raise their rates 25%, people think their solar stopped working. No, they're just getting, they got to pay more for the additional bit they use. Or, hey, you know what? You got a point. Let us send somebody out there. Let's see what we can do. Let's see how we do it. So the level that we communicate with our customers is a lot different too.
Thinking again back to those early days, talking about how hard it was to get a financing partner originally, You fast forward, it feels like you've had a lot of success with a lot of financial partners more recently. And I'm curious how you got the financial world to kind of take note that this was a different model and they should be looking at this differently. And they should be thinking about these customers as worthy customers of this product. So how did you get the capital markets, the finance world kind of on board? What was that process like?
Well, you got two pieces, right? You got one where you borrow money against the future revenues of your leases. And you have one where you find tax equity partners that are going to put money in to harvest the tax credits, right? And both of them are very hard. On the ITC front, the tax equity front, we were very lucky. There was a lady by the name of Tracy Gunn out at US Bank, and she came from community development background, and she came out to our offices out in New Orleans East. And of course, we had everybody bring all their spouses, girlfriends, boyfriends, and brothers and sisters into the office. So it looked like we were busy. We had more than 5 people. But she gave us our first tax equity fund. And that was a game changer for us. But to go out and find a back leverage that would actually loan us money against the future of lease revenue when we weren't checking FICO scores and debt to income was almost impossible. We finally found a group that had a mandate to invest in urban projects. They were basically the only people who talked to us. Urban investment. And when it was all said and done with the fees and everything else, I think we were paying about 21% interest. And, they were only advancing a very small amount against these leases. And they told us, we think you're going to have 5% default every year. We think in 10 years, half your portfolio is going to be gone. And then, 18 months in, people are paying us. We went out to the market again. We knocked on 100 doors and we got one person again. And we lowered it down to 17%. And then after 4 or 5 years, people are really taking a look at it. And then you got a couple of people saying this may make sense and this may make sense. And we finally got to the point where we did a market price deal. And let me tell you what, we were popping champagne corks.
That would have been a good day.
Yeah. And then that gives you credibility. And every time you go through the due diligence, they're going to send an ENY or somebody else, and they're going to track all the cash, and they're going to come back and they're saying, yeah, they're not fudging this. These people are paying them. This is really happening. And we met the Brookfield guys a while back, and these guys have been just so great to work with. They focus on our mission. They love what we do. We just increased our line to 400 million. And, I think there might be more announcements down the road, and along the way, also, we had some great tax equity people. We had the guys over at Standard Industries, which GAF, biggest roofing company in North America. And, they came on board with tax equity and said, we like what you're doing. We want to be aligned here. We got people at, Marathon Capital that like what we're doing so much that they come down and do hero homes with us, where we find a family or a couple or a single person that has a really tough story, but is really deserving. And we go in and put solar up on the roof. We go into the house. We max out the energy efficiency. We usually replace the appliances. Sometimes we put a new roof on. We put new siding on. We paint. We do all those things. When we're done, we look them in the eye and we say, it's all yours. We're never going to charge you a dime. You're our hero. And we walk out the door. And
That's
they
awesome.
come down and do those with us. They come down and help, put the refrigerators in. A couple of them are brave enough to climb up on the roof. And those are the types of partners that we have now. And it feels so good. And you just walk around here and you talk to people about mission. You talk about what you're doing, and you see how excited they are. Matt Schottenheimer, who came to work for us, and we invited him to the ELT meeting to give a presentation. And he pulled me aside. He said, I just want to tell you how much I feel about this company. He said, I've only been here since October. He said, but I feel passionate about what we're doing. I feel like I'm not at a job. I feel like, I'm making a difference. And this is amazing. And I want you to know I feel good about what I'm doing. And gosh, that just makes you feel great, doesn't it?
Let's get to that. Let's talk, a couple huge aspects. First, I want to hear what it was like. You guys recently got your B Corp status, which I think is an interesting and emblematic of kind of institutional recognition of that feeling that you just talked about. Why was it important for you to do that? What was that process about for you?
So on the B Corp side, as you know, if you're a board of directors, when you make a decision, you have to make your decision based upon one thing. It's the value to the investors, right? A company like PosiGen doesn't always put the dollar they can make on every transaction at the top of the food chain, right? A lot of times it's how much can you save the customers? How do you invest in the team that you have, right? 65% of our team members are persons of color or female or both, which is just unheard of in our industry. So becoming a B Corp allows the board of directors to make decisions not just based upon return to the investors, but also other things outside of that, like savings to the customer, investing in our team members, investing in the communities we serve. That was very important. B Lab was, they score you, and you've got to really work to get that score. But it was important to us. We wanted people to know that, yes, we are a for-profit company. Yes, we are growing, and we are going to get a great return for our investors and our team members and all the people that are stakeholders in our company. But we're also putting other things first, and we're also making sure that we're giving back, and we're going to do well by doing good. And this is a big way to say that, right?
I mean, it's premature for it at this point. I mean, let's talk about that overall impact, because what's so amazing about the company is your product, your service, it is contributing positively to the environment or mitigating negativity. It's contributing positively to society, providing a sustainable future for families. I'm just curious about how you thought about from day one the importance of those being a part of what you're trying to build.
I was at a good place in my life. We lost a lot in Katrina. A lot of people did, but we were rebuilding. And you get to a point where if you think with your heart and your faith, my faith is very deep for me, and hopefully it gives me my North Star more often than not. And you start thinking about what you want to do and how you want to do it. And you think about how you want to be remembered. I want to be remembered for all the lives I touched, right? People I helped along. And when I look back, when I was in college, I was driving a delivery truck after hours, making $5 an hour. I was delivering pizzas at night. I was working in the cafeteria in the morning, making grits for 2,000 college students. None of that stuff was easy. And then as I left and I got that first opportunity to be an assistant manager at a store, I mean, I didn't have anything. I can remember, when I had a paycheck run out, 3 days before the next paycheck, and there was nothing to eat. And I was hoping that the boss would order pizza so I could eat a couple slices of pizza. And it was tough. And along the way, a bunch of people helped me. A bunch of people were like, hey, let me show you how to do this. And hey, if you want to hang around after hours, I'm going to send you to a training class, or I'm going to give you an opportunity. I think you can do this. And when you think about that, that to me is just so important. My wife and I were franchisees for a while, and we were always in the top 10 franchise, and we won some awards. And what mattered most to the two of us was the people we helped along the way that came to work for us, maybe as a delivery truck, and then got promoted to account manager, then assistant manager, sales manager, store manager. And they achieved what they wanted in life because we gave them opportunities. And the one thing that we didn't do that the rest of the franchisees did is we didn't sign non-competes with our managers. We'd have great managers. We did become partners with a couple of them where we could open up another store with them, but in some cases we couldn't. And if somebody approached them and said, hey, I'm going to put up the money, let's go open a store or wherever, we celebrated that. The only thing we asked them was stay for 60 or 90 days, find your replacement and train them. And we're going to throw a party on the way out the door. Do you know how much that trust engendered in the rest of our team members, right? And so that made us feel great. And we go back to the franchise, annual meetings, and we'd see these guys and gals walking up on stage and getting awards. And when they came down, who was the first person they came and hugged? It's myself and Lisa, right? So as we thought about building a company, we've always wanted to invest in our team members. We always want to give them opportunities and training, pay people a good wage. Hell, we had a living wage back in 2011 when nobody was talking about a living wage. And, really investing in good benefits to make sure that people felt safe and they had their medical and dental and vision and disability and life insurance and all that. So we've been doing that. We really wanted, now we had a clean slate. We could build a company exactly how we wanted. Let's have a mission. Let's deliver on that mission. Let's help people out. Let's make sure that every single person that comes to work for us knows what that mission is and why we do it. And to this day, 13 years later, when we have a new hire class come in every other Monday, 99 times out of 100, I spend 30 minutes with that new hire class, and I talk to them about what Lisa and I started back in that warehouse 13 years ago and where we're going now. And it feels good. It felt like the right thing to do. And then it became self-sustaining. The more money we saved people, the more stories we heard about people crying over their utility bills because they weren't going to be able to buy enough groceries or, not being able to spend the money on the kids' uniforms. It just made a difference. And having those people that come in and and find a home here at PosiGen, and seeing them succeed, and seeing people get promoted over the years. People that went from inside sales, which is telemarketing, it's tough, and now they're running departments, or they're a director. And I love all those individuals and all those success stories, and I love talking to our customers and them saying how much money they saved and what a difference it's made in their lives. It just makes me feel good. Maybe it's just selfish.
I mean, it's amazing. It should make you feel good. It's not selfish. I think it's what's amazing about it. And it really makes me wonder, like, what you're doing is so inarguably better, right? It's providing affordable, renewable energy to communities that need it, who are often overlooked from that process, helping them save money that goes back into their community, and doing it in a way that you're still building this incredibly profitable, high growth business. Why aren't more people doing this? Why don't you have competitors? I'm curious if you would take on like what the disconnect there is, because it feels like we see it all the time with, where institutional funds don't go towards these communities. I'm just curious why you think that is. I mean, it's fascinating to me.
I mean, it's, part of it's this is what we do, this is how we do it. Part of it is everybody's got to agree that, we're going to change that paradigm. And when you think about these companies that are just built in such a different way, and then you think about the people in their credit committees, their investment committees, their boards saying, hey, you know what? We're going to go over here and we're going to work in these working class communities. We're going to go here and work in these underserved communities, these communities of color. We're going to go do these things. And we think that we can do this without checking FICO scores. All the things have been ingrained in our head, right?
Right.
If a person doesn't have a 700 FICO score, boy, you can't sell them this. Or if you sell them this, you got to sell them at a higher price. And how disconnected is this? I know some finance companies that said, we're going to work with people with lower FICO scores. Here's what we're going to do. If your FICO score is 800, you pay 4%. If it's 750, you pay 6%. If it's 700, you pay 8%. And we're going to do this business with this person that's got a 550 FICO score, but they're going to pay 18%. And so what you've done is you've taken somebody that already has less money than all the rest of your customers, and you said to them, I'm going to charge you more for the exact same service, and I'm going to make it really difficult for you to be able to make your payments because you're going to pay the highest payment. The person least able to pay is going to pay the highest payment. And look, I don't believe in wealth redistribution or anything like that. I believe in capitalism, and I believe in hard work, but it still doesn't make sense. It doesn't create an environment where people are going to be happy and people are going to be successful either as a customer of your company or as a team member of your company.
Curious, as we think about kind of the last couple of years, we started to see more institutional and public action towards renewable services and incentives for energy efficiency, incentives for solar on homes. What does that look like in your world? How's that manifested in real life within the business? Are you guys seeing kind of a sales growth tied to it? And what are your thoughts on kind of what the public policy world might want to be thinking about doing going forward?
Yeah, the interesting thing is this has become somewhat partisan, and I've never understood that, right? I mean, George W. Bush put solar panels back up on the White House.
Yeah.
Energy has always been a Republican plank in their platform. And, I'm all of the above, right? We're not going to stop burning oil tomorrow. We're not going to stop burning natural gas tomorrow. And granted, we should never burn coal. That's nasty stuff you don't want to burn. But, we need nuclear, we need wind, we need solar, we need hydro. And when you poll people, like 77% of people believe in clean renewables, Republican, Democrat, right? So why are we arguing? Why are we trying to get rid of retail net metering here? What are we doing this over here? So policy does impact, right? And when you talk to people, they get it. Right? You talk to Republican lawmakers, you got a lot of smart people out there that say, hey, yeah, we need this. But a lot of times they don't get behind certain things that are going to help. They have in some cases. And, there's been some good movement. The infrastructure bill, of course, the Inflation Reduction Act, you can take a look at a lot of stuff in there, and there's a lot of spending, but there's some really good stuff in there as well. Very focused on domestic manufacturing. We have quintupled the amount of capacity we have for solar panels in the U.S. in the last couple of years. I read a statistic that in the next 18 months that we'll be able to fulfill 80% of the solar material needs in the U.S. by U.S. manufactured companies. Jobs, I mean, just our vendors alone, right? Our biggest electronics manufacturer was not building their product here in the U.S. After the IRA bill got passed, they set up a factory over in Austin, Texas, Solar Edge. I think when it gets to its full capacity, I'll have 850 employees there in an old abandoned Texas Instrument factory, producing enough inverters that they don't just fulfill their sales here in the U.S. They're going to ship U.S.-made inverters outside the country, which is amazing.
Yep.
They're setting up 4 optimizer lines, I believe, in Florida and Texas, and they're going to employ 1,500 people there, and we're going to be buying all of our electronics then here in the U.S. And Silfab, who started up in Canada but opened up a facility years ago on the West Coast, up in Washington, they're investing in it will probably come online quicker than anybody else as a new cell manufacturing facility, actually making the cells that you put on the solar panels, and of course the solar panels themselves. And they're going to be producing 4 megawatts or 4 gigawatts of solar a year here in the US. And just seeing all those things happening, the jobs that are created. And of course, we love doing business with those guys. We love people that are building stuff here in the US, and then investing in energy communities, right? Where you got high unemployment because people are cycling out of that. We're up doing solar business up in West Virginia. It's going fantastic, right? We got a great partner up there, Solar Holler. And we hired a bunch of people this year. We're going to grow 60, 70, 80% this year. And I think we're going to continue to do that. So I think that there's been some great policy out there. I think that there's people that, have to be able to see through the trees to the forest and understand where we're going long term and what that impact is. And look, there's so many things that clean energy invests in, especially when it's distributed generation. You're helping reduce the strain on the grid. If you have storage, you're protecting your consumers there. The cleaning of the environment, people breathing cleaner air reduces your medical costs and everything that goes along with it. And, I don't want to be squishy about this in any way. I'm a conservative. I want to talk about the fact that you can do this and make money and create opportunity at the same time, create a lot of jobs, but we're saving the environment. We're making people breathe cleaner air. It's making a difference.
I'm curious what you're most excited about for the future of PosiGen. I mean, you now sit in the executive chairman role, and you got your successors out there taking to the promised land, as you say. But what are you looking forward to, in the next chapter at PosiGen?
Oh, we got a great team, right? Peter, if you're listening to this, quit listening, go back to work. No, I'm excited about the team. I'm excited about the investors that we have. We got a great group of investors that are behind us, that believe in the mission, believe in also building a profitable company. And I'm looking at helping that many more families, right? We hope to help over 10,000 families go solar and get energy efficiency this year versus, 6,000 last year, and 20,000, 25,000, and then 100,000 working with partners. I'd say the biggest change in our company over the last 3 years is now we have a channel partner group where we find like-minded solar companies. I was talking to a great group just the other day, and they say, how do we go into these working class neighborhoods? How do we go into these underserved communities? We want to sell solar like you do. And we go, we got to wait for them to do that. Be a partner with PosiGen. You don't have to check FICO. You don't have to check debt to income, but you got to save people money. You got to care about what you're doing. And, people are knocking on our door every day wanting to do that.
I love it. As we start to wrap up, you talk about earlier wanting a legacy of the folks, the families that you touched and made their lives better, which I find such a refreshing and inspirational perspective. I'm curious, you're a serial entrepreneur and one that approaches leadership with such service orientation, it seems. Like, how do you imbue your teams with that same sort of do good, do well ethos every day, so that you can't be everywhere with all 25 companies or however many it is today? How do you take your truly unique perspective and make sure that others that are managing your companies for you are carrying that forward?
That's so timely because we've got our marketing team in here today. And I was talking about how they create a message to our team members, our customers out there, but how much is internal facing, right? Because if you're paying the bills, if you're doing the taxes, if you're hiring people or figuring out insurance or doing a lot of these things, you're not touching those customers out there. So making sure that the customer is the hero of our story all the time, right? So every story we tell, we want to start with what we're doing, how we're impacting, and then showing those customers and showing those testimonials and these people so happy to be doing business with PosiGen and what we're delivering on. And I think that whether you're having an ELT meeting, whether you're having a leadership meeting with all your directors, or you're having a team meeting within the business units, always making sure that we talk about why we do what we do, what we're trying to do. The number that I want to trumpet to everybody is PosiGen has saved our customers, our families, $65 million to date. And that's $65 million. That's net savings after they've paid PosiGen. That's money that goes back in their pockets. That buys those school supplies and the groceries, and it changes their lives, and it invests in the communities, and it builds a tax base, and it builds a space for people to create new small businesses and create jobs. And that's so impactful. And that's the number I want everybody to wake up at. And when they flip open their laptop and they go, okay, what's on? Oh, look, we saved 66 million. Oh, we're up to 70 million. That's the thing that makes people happy and excited. So you tell the story every time you get in front of people.
Where can listeners get more information? Where can they find out if they're in a PosiGen network, or where should we send folks to learn more?
No, absolutely. www.PosiGen, POSIGEN. It stands for positivegeneration.com. So go to PosiGen.com, click on it if you want to be a partner. If you want to be a solar partner, there's a place for you to click on. If you want to be a solar customer, there's a place for you to click on. If you just want to give us some feedback, you can do that too. Read our story. We like who we are. We like to share who we are.
Amazing. I am so excited for folks to hear the story.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate you having us.
Huge thanks to Tom Neyhart for joining us on Consensus in Conversation this week. As Tom mentioned, you can find out more about PosiGen at their website, PosiGen.com. We'll have a link to that and all their socials in our show notes, so you can connect with them further. And also, make sure you check out those show notes on Spotify this week for the Q&A. As always, you can email us at cic@consensus-digital.com. That's cic@consensus-digital.com. You can also message me directly on LinkedIn or Threads at ckgaughan. That's at ckgaughan. Send us your questions, comments, or ideas for future guests. We love getting your feedback. If you've enjoyed this episode, please take a second to leave us a rating and a review on Apple Podcasts. It's so helpful with growing our reach and adding new people to the conversation. And it helps us to continue bringing you more awesome talks with the business leaders you want to hear from. Thanks, everyone. We'll be back next week with a brand new conversation. Consensus in Conversation is hosted and executive produced by me, Conor Gaughan. The episode was produced by Will Gatchell and Jeff Rock, with editing from the good folks at Reasonable Volume. Special thanks to the Consensus team, including creative director Kate Tucker, Greg Hurrell on research, and Patrick Gallagher on strategy. Consensus in Conversation can be found on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you listen. Consensus in Conversation is a podcast by Consensus Digital Media, produced in association with Reasonable Volume.